All right. Good afternoon, everyone. I almost said morning, but it's officially noon. Hope everybody had a lovely long weekend. We ended up getting some good weather, so that was lovely. So welcome to our May Lunch and Learn, all about the impacts to our water source and the Beaver Run Reservoir. And today we are featuring some select Protect PT staff members, as well as the Hannah Homan from Three Rivers Waterkeeper. So without further ado, we can move on to some of the intros, and I can tell you a little bit about our organizations. Alrighty, so from Protect PT today, we have Sarah, our community organizer. We have Jim, who will be joining us shortly, who is our community advocate. And we have Lauren Posey as well, our environmental policy advocate. And just to tell you a little bit about Protect PT, if you're not already familiar, so Protect PT, the PT stands for Penn Trafford. It's where we originated 10 years ago. But we also serve, we've expanded to serving both Allegheny and Westmoreland County. So Protect PT is a nonprofit organization dedicated to ensuring residents' safety, security, and quality of life by engaging in education and advocacy to protect the economic, environmental, and legal rights of the people in Westmoreland and Allegheny counties. We were established in 2014 as a grassroots community-based nonprofit organization designed to protect our community from the harmful environmental impacts of fossil fuel activity. We are dedicated to ensuring Allegheny and Westmoreland counties residents' safety, security, and quality of life. Also, our other special featured guest is Hannah Homan, who is the projects coordinator at Three Rivers Waterkeeper. And to tell you a little bit about Three Rivers Waterkeeper, they were founded in 2009 with the goal of improving and protecting the water quality of the Allegheny, Monongahela, and Ohio rivers and their respective watersheds. So their overall mission is dedicated to protecting, improving, and restoring the water quality of the Allegheny, Monongahela, and Ohio rivers, as well as their surrounding watersheds. Through science, advocacy, enforcement, and community engagement, they work to ensure that everyone has access to clean, safe water for drinking, fishing, swimming, and recreation, now and for future generations. So, without further ado, we can move into the presentation.
All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Sarah, the community organizer. Today we're going to be discussing a couple different topics here that all go back to um, helping to promote conservation with the Municipal Water Authority in Beaver Run Reservoir. So first off, we'll be talking about the impacts of droughts and kind of what that does to the community and how those are experienced. And then we'll be talking about some water conservation orders. These are, it's kind of talking about how people are told to conserve their water when they're using public drinking water, but private corporations, industrial use maybe is not as often regulated in that way during a drought. And then the third topic, we'll talk about some water sales, and that is something that we have already had some success with. And then the last part of this will be talking about the strategies for water management, some ideas, and what we can do to keep moving forward.
Hi everyone, this is Hannah with Three Rivers Waterkeeper. I'm going to first talk about the impacts of droughts and how we can prepare for the next one and be a bit more proactive as we see an increase in droughts and just give some background on what we've been looking at since we started this project. So right here I have a map of the Beaver Run Reservoir and the Municipal Authority of Westmoreland County, MAWC, their service area. And so as you can see on the center image, That is the service area for Beaver Run Reservoir, the blue area above that pink section. And Beaver Run Reservoir is about 1,300 acres and lies within a 43 square mile drainage area, and it serves approximately 130,000 people throughout northern Westmoreland County and small portions of neighboring counties such as Indiana and Armstrong. We can go to the next. Thank you. And so, what is a drought? Drought is a deficiency in precipitation over an extended period, usually a season or more, and it results in a water shortage, causing adverse impacts on vegetation, animals, and or people. And when we're thinking about how drought can impact reservoirs, essentially when there's not enough precipitation in the watershed area to fill a collection point, like the Beaver Run Reservoir, the water levels in that area can deplete to extremely low levels, which we saw this happen in 2023 with the Beaver Run Reservoir, which is when we really started all collaborating on this project. And an interesting piece of that is that in the 2023 drought, Westmoreland County was not actually in a drought at the time of the initial water conservation order, which I will cover a bit more in a little bit. But that data did come from rain gauges, groundwater, and surface water measurements that were outside of the 22,000 acres in the Beaver Run watershed, and those were all upstream of the dam. So there was a need for precipitation there is a need for precipitation upstream of the reservoir for those 7 streams that fed the reservoir, and we saw that despite there not being a drought watch, there were still impacts from surrounding areas to that reservoir. You can go to the next slide. And so, how does drought impact me, you, everybody else? The consequences from drought, they're far reaching. They impact water quality, public health, the economy, the natural environment, public infrastructure, and more. But because drought emerges slowly, the damage is more gradual. People, particularly those who may live in urban areas or in areas they may not even be aware that they're living in a drought impacted area. Droughts don't damage a person's private property in the same way like natural disasters do with like the tornadoes we've been seeing, hurricanes. And so it reduces public concern around responding to drought. And we want to help us be a bit more proactive when we think about this and be ready for the next one. So it's not a reactive moment for all of us. We can go to the next slide. Thank you. And so on this slide, I did a bit of a timeline to just overview the work that we had been doing around this since 2023, and we can share more information about that if needed. But so in November 2023 was when Municipal Authority of Westmoreland County implemented a voluntary water conservation order. And by December 2023, the state had declared a drought watch, and then that triggered Municipal Authority of Westmoreland County to do a mandatory water conservation order. And so that they had to ask more than 56,000 customers to reduce their water use by 10% from the reservoir. And that mandatory order stayed until January 29th, 2024. And then because they shifted back to voluntary conservation because we were no longer in severe drought. And so through March, they lifted the drought watch, and the DEP lifted the drought watch for the state. Municipal Authority of Westmoreland County lifted any conservation orders on their customers. But by November 2024, the state had already issued another drought watch, and the Municipal Authority then ordered a voluntary water conservation order amid the drought conditions. And then into January 2025, they actually had to ask their customers to reduce their system demand and water usage because of leaks in the system. It wasn't due to drought, but there's other factors that can have impacts to people's access to their water. And so we need to think about all of those compounding factors. But through January through March 2025, there was still a voluntary water conservation order in place due to the state being in a drought watch. And in April of this year, they lifted the drought watch, and it was lifted for 6 counties, including Westmoreland County. And so we are no longer in drought watch, and we're in a very water-rich season. So despite, we're not worried about drought right now, our timeline and the way that things kind of flow, we can see that it's cyclical, and we want to be ready for the next one. And so when we think about the depletion of water supplies, there's challenges in how to predict declines in water supply, because there's the increasing occurrence and severity of drought. Land cover and land use changes happen throughout time. And then there's also increased water demand. And so when we think about industries such as fracking companies withdrawing water from these specifically from the Beaver Run Reservoir, water systems that are experiencing withdrawals without recharge are at even greater risks of water supply demand. And precipitation cannot meet the increasing demands of oil and gas, because when they take water from this system, it does not return to the system. And that'll get discussed more throughout the presentation. We can go to the next slide. And here I have a chart from Frack Tracker that shows fracking and water use in Pennsylvania. And we wanted to include this because water use for fracking has increased in Pennsylvania from 2 to 7 million gallons of water per well in 2008 to now 14 to 39 million gallons of water per well. And you can see how this line continues to go up, and they're using more water per well and they're doing more fracking. So we need to think about what can that look like next. We can go to the next slide. And so I just wanted to also provide an overview of water conservation orders, because I just talked about them a whole bunch and want to give some insight on how those get triggered and all of that type of stuff. Next slide. Thank you. So a drought declaration occurs through the PADEP. They determine drought declarations for counties, and there are 3 levels that include drought watch, drought warning, and drought emergency. And the factors that they use to make these declarations include stream flow, groundwater level, precipitation, and soil moisture. And they also receive information from public water suppliers, such as the Municipal Authority of Westmoreland County, to gain more insight into that. And you can see a map from April 2025 up in the corner, and that was PADEP's drought map. And I actually just was checking to look at the drought map for right now in May, and it looks exactly the same. So there's been no updates on that, but I just wanted to make sure that was pointed out. Oh, sorry, my dog might bark. We can go to the next slide. And so a drought contingency plan. Water suppliers are required to develop and maintain a valid drought contingency plan with the Commonwealth that outlines watch, warning, and emergency stages. And at the Beaver Run Reservoir, voluntary water conservation measures kick in when the water levels reach the trigger point of 1,034 feet above sea level. And then mandatory water conservation measures are triggered at 1,033 feet above sea level. We can go to the next slide. And so something I talked about already in our timeline, but want to point out is, from 2024 to 2025, old drought ends, new drought begins, new orders of water conservation are issued. And these are just some article screen grabs that we'd seen whenever I'd gone over that timeline. But there's patterns, and we want everybody to be more prepared for the next drought, because it's not a if, it's a when. And we can go to the next slide, and I think that's the end of my section.
All right, so now we're going to be looking at MAWC water sales. More specifically, how much of our water went to fracking corporations in 2023 and 2024. So, water taken by the oil and gas industry in 2023 amounted to a staggering 328,728,378 gallons. It's a very difficult number to say because it is very long. And that was out of only 2 reservoirs. And this massive amount of water was consumed by 3 companies. Olympus consumed the lion's share of it at 277 million gallons, CNX with 6 million gallons, and Apex with 44 million gallons. And this amount of water use is equivalent to all of the houses in Vandergrift, just for a frame of reference. And we also saw some illegal withdrawals occur in 2023. The DEP issued a violation to CNX Gas Company for unauthorized water withdrawals for 17 days from Beaver Run Reservoir. And this totaled almost 400,000 gallons that they took illegally, sneakily, for 17 days. And so this is of concern to us because This is self-reported data from industry. There's no one at DEP or at MAWC who is really closely keeping an eye on withdrawals like this. And this deficiency in oversight on operations is why violations like this can happen. And it leads you to think, how many times have they done it and not gotten caught? You can go to the next slide. Oh, my bad. Sorry, back one. I think there's a delay on my end. There we go. Okay. Water taken in 2024. So we did see a significant decrease in the amount of water used in 2023 versus 2024. In 2024, it was 155 million gallons. 83% of that was from Beaver Run Reservoir, 16% was from Indian Creek, and 1% was from the mixing zone. And this was consumed by 4 companies, Olympus, CNX, and Apex again, as well as Range. And once again, Olympus was the top consumer. And yeah, we're not positive why so much less water was used in 2024 versus 2023. We know that 2023 was a big year for development. Maybe there were more unauthorized withdrawals in 2023. We're not sure why the change occurred, but we know that the water use in 2023 was extreme. And it's very possible that usage could go up again to those sorts of levels, which is why now is the time to act. And once again, we saw illegal withdrawals in 2024. So we're seeing a pattern here. And this was 53,000 gallons from the reservoir and then another 1.36 million gallons, and then another 1.17 million gallons. And so here's just a graph of the trends in oil and gas water usage in Westmoreland County. You can see that in recent years, it has been increasing very, very significantly. We've seen over time the amount of water used like per fracking well or fracking well pad has increased over time. And clearly this is reflected in the water that they're using in our county. So now we're asking ourselves, what will future use look like? And here is a map of all of the permitted water withdrawal locations in Westmoreland County for the Municipal Authority of Westmoreland County. This map doesn't mean that they're actively taking from all of these sources currently. However, it does mean that these are all of the sites where they could choose to withdraw. And so as you can see, it's a number of sites, and if they choose to withdraw significantly from all of them, it's going to be very heavy water usage. And we also have a link down below if you would like to go check that map out on your own. All right, and now I'm going to pass it over to our community advocate, Jim, who's going to talk about strategies for sustainable water management.
Hi, everybody. My name is Jim Serralano. I am with protectpt. I'm the community advocate. And some of the strategies we have for sustainable water management are on the next few slides. Next slide, please. So the first is the free market system, fair rates. Charge more for the money charge more for the water that is being used when there is a drought. And secondly, charge more to consumers that permanently use the water. When you and I use water in our homes, that water goes right back into the water system. You know, we shower, we cook with it. It goes down the drain and it goes back to the water treatment plant. Then it goes right back into the system. That's not the case for frackers. Fracking permanently removes water from the water supply. That's because whenever frackers use water to frack their wells, the water that comes back is filled with chemicals that can't be removed. It's also radioactive because when you dig down that far into the ground, the layers of sediment and earth down there, the shale, the Marcellus and Utica levels, are really very, very naturally radioactive. And the water that comes back is filled with what's called TNORM, or technologically enhanced naturally occurring radioactive material. And that can't be removed. So the first step is to charge more to these frackers, because once they use that water, it's gone for good, unlike the rest of us who use it and then it goes back into the system. The second is governance. Create a long-term strategic plan for water conservation, and that has to do with writing proper ordinances and other rules for water usage. Conservation, pause fracking withdrawals whenever there's a drought watch or a warning is in place. And then efficiency, cap annual fracking withdrawals from the Beaver Run Reservoir. Next slide, please. So we had a huge win for sustainable water management back in April. The MAWC had raised the rate charged to fracking corporations per 1,000 gallons of water twice. protectpt, along with others, had lobbied the municipal authority, arguing that, just like I said, the water that is used by the frackers is gone permanently and can never be gotten back, and therefore it should be charged. They should be charged more because of the nature of their use. In April 1st, 2024, they raised the rate from $5.37 per 1,000 gallons to $9.40 per 1,000 gallons, which is about 40%. And then in 2025, they raised it again to $10.30 per 1,000 gallons. And for amounts in excess of 240,000 gallons, the rate goes up from $6.60 to $8 per 1,000 gallon. So that was a big win. Next slide, please. So what we're actually trying to do ultimately is to prevent frackers from obtaining water during periods of water conservation or drought. And how we are attempting to do that is to create a rule for MAWC whenever as to address when they can release water to fracking corporations. So MAWC is a public-private corporation that was created by the Westmoreland Council by ordinance. And on April 9th, 1942, the commissioners created the municipal authority, and it delegated them the authority to manage water supplies, treat wastewater, and to set prices. We had not known until just recently whether or not the delegated authority was irrevocable or whether it could be modified. We just got the ordinance that created it, and it is modifiable, and we're working on that modification now. We are going to suggest changes to the ordinance that would require MAWC to follow guidelines set forth in the Pennsylvania Emergency Management Plan, and now the newly created or newly updated Westmoreland County Emergency Management Plan. And those emergency management plans deal with all sorts of emergencies, from earthquakes to fires to drought. And they have certain recommendations with respect to drought that call for conservation measures to be put into place. Some voluntary, and then at certain levels, it becomes mandatory. And what we are going to do is we're going to suggest first to MAWC and then to the Westmoreland commissioners, if MAWC is not agreeable, that they follow the Westmoreland County Emergency Management Plan and the Pennsylvania Emergency Management Plan with respect to water conservation policies. It's our view that things like cooking, bathing, personal use for individuals, uses in hospitals, nursing homes, school facilities, and such, are in fact necessary uses, and they should continue during drought periods as much as possible. Things like fracking use are not necessary for survival, not necessary for the ongoing of daily life, and that they should be subject to restrictions, particularly during times of conservation and mandatory conservation, such as in periods of drought. Next slide, please. So we're going to be diligent in calling for pauses on fracking withdrawals whenever we're in a drought watch. We're going to want to hold operators accountable, and individuals, we're asking them to talk to their county commissioners and to ask MAWC board members to enact rules on fracking water withdrawals. We're going to be presenting to the Municipal Authority of Westmoreland County our proposal that fracking withdrawals be limited during periods of drought. And if they're not amenable to that, we're going to take that to the county commissioners. At that point in time, we're going to ask the community to really get on board and contact their public representatives. Next slide, please. So, how can you help? Take action. Now is the time to do it. Write a letter to encourage MAWC to focus on a strategic plan on water conservation and a long-term conservation plan. We're also asking you to encourage them to ask for users to be efficient in their use. Share our letter writing campaign with your friends, neighbors, and colleagues. You can use that QR code to ask questions of us and get on our letter writing campaign. We ask that you do that. MAWC boards meetings are the third Wednesday of every month at 125 Park and Pool Road, New Stanton. Next slide, please. Thank you very much. Does anybody have any questions?
Yeah, thank you guys so much for presenting that. Obviously, if you have any further questions or want any of the resources from the presentation that our lovely presenters gave, please feel free to reach out to any of them. You can also reach out to me at Natalie at protectpt.org. And you will notice that I have a little typo in the writing a letter to MAWC comment there. It's .info, not .ifo. So sorry about that. But yeah, without further ado, we have a bunch of leftover time to answer any of your questions. And yeah, so I will give some time to let any questions build up. And then in the meantime, I'm just curious for our viewers' sake, what is ideally the timeline going to look like for this ask?
I can help to answer that. Right now, we're hoping to just keep encouraging our letter campaign and getting a lot of traction on that until we get more information from the Westmoreland Hazard Mitigation Plan as well. So once those are kind of in order, we'd be able to like move forward and keep pursuing this. So really, it's an ongoing timeline. It can depend on how much we put effort into it to kind of get the return on that.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. These things definitely don't happen overnight, and they have to come from, community demand. So, if you do live in Westmoreland County or source your water from MAWC, you know, get involved. These are things that you should definitely care about. Water is very important, and your access to it is also extremely important. So, write a letter if you have any questions on what you should include, how to engage, follow that link that I have up here on the screen, and also reach out to, one of us, whether that be Sarah, Jim, Lauren, or even Hannah, and, we can give you pointers. I know writing letters, especially, a brick and mortar letter, can be a bit intimidating. It seems like that is something we don't do much of anymore. But we're here to guide you and kind of give you suggestions on what you can write. Um, so yeah.
Yep. And a helpful part of it too is that the letter is pre-written, so it's kind of just a way that we can send it and email it over. So if anybody needs help or direction of like what they want to ask or what they want to put in, they can also add that as a section too. So it's open in that way that if you want to kind of suggest your own suggestions or also go with kind of the things that we're hoping to urge.
Yeah, well, that makes it even easier for our wonderful audience. Um, you know, you already have something put together for you. And I mean, if you have additional concerns, go for it. But again, we're here to support you in any questions or concerns you might have. And, get active in your community. This is how these things, change. Organizing as a community is extremely valuable and important, and that's one of our driving focuses here at Protect BT as a grassroots organization is, empowering our community to make change. It's not just about us as an organization making change, but helping you guys make the change as well. So yeah, again, if anyone has any questions, please let me know. And if you four have anything else you would like to add that you might think is important, just let me know.
I'm just going to throw out there that the time is now to think about drought before we're in one again. And so that's why despite all the rain we've been getting, it's good to think about it before it's too late. So thank you all for attending too.
Right, absolutely. And that's a very important sentiment to have. Just because it's not affecting you right now in the moment doesn't mean it won't. So better safe than sorry, as I like to say. So looks like we're not getting many questions here. So we can go ahead and move on to the next slide, our final slide. So again, I want to thank our presenters for presenting today. Great presentation, lots of information. Hopefully we get some, people engaging with this campaign. And yeah, thanks again for your time. Thanks to our audience for attending. And if you enjoy this style of presentation or just the lunch and learn idea in general, be sure to tune in for our next one next month on Tuesday, June 24th at 12 p.m. As always, our lunch and learns are always the last Tuesday of every month at noon. So we have an exciting guest in the works. Can't really reveal the details yet because some things aren't set in stone, but they will be soon. So keep an eye out for that. And yeah, so before you head out, if you guys want to go ahead and take our Lunch and Learn survey, that is up on the screen right now. This survey helps me and everyone else who helps coordinate the Lunch and Learns to, get some feedback from you guys to see what works, what doesn't work, maybe some guests you want to see in the future or some topics you want. We want these Lunch and Learns to really be adjusted to your needs and your wants. So yeah, and make sure to follow us on socials to keep up to date with any of our campaigns or any of our events. We always are having stuff going on. Especially this upcoming month in June, we will be having a lot of events coming up. So again, check our socials, get involved, and if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to anyone here at Protect PT, and make sure you support Three Rivers Waterkeeper as well. They're doing great work. They're an awesome partner of ours, so definitely want to shine a spotlight on them. And that about concludes the Lunch and Learn. Thanks for attending today, everyone.